Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Home Building Hub. You're with Colin and co-host Darren Brennan, as always. Today, we're going to talk to someone who's built 8 times. So strap yourself in, because what we're going to do is we're going to extract as much information and insight from Ben, our guest, as we can. We're going to highlight, talk about your experience. What are the key lessons, the learnings, and what are the common mistakes? What are the things that took you by surprise or that you did not plan for? And to wrap it up, Ben will be able to give us a few tips for you. If you're a first home buyer, owner-occupier, investor, whatever it is, you're going to get some great insight out of this episode. So welcome along, Daz. How you going this weekend, mate? Good?
I'm going great. Yeah, it's been another solid week, and just does feel like there's a little bit of positivity in the market out there, Cole. So it's just, we're not getting ahead of ourselves at all, but it's just a touch more positive, I reckon, weekly. It might be just 1% a week. But, if we keep this up by Christmas, mate, I think things are going to be looking really rosy in the new year for all of us, which is what we want.
Green shoots, you reckon, Darren? Green shoots?
It is. Spring is on us, and there's green shoots on my trees outside, and there's a few green shoots in the industry as well. So, it's pretty good to see that things are up and about a little bit more. So, I think that's great news. There's been, just enough positivity. And people out and about, looking to build a home. So it's a, perfect time having Ben on board to talk about, some of his experience in building 8 homes. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So everyone, just for your info, Ben works for a company called Core Projects, and we had Ben on a week or two ago talking about his business and what they do regarding land. But we'd sort of understood and through the discussions with Ben that he built 8 properties over his journey, and we thought it'd be a really good sort of separate episode to present to you guys. So welcome back, Ben, and thanks for joining us again. Some great insights. Yeah.
I suppose firstly, right off the top, any information I provide is not financial advice. So it's it's as I've learned over the journey. But no, it has. It's funny how it creeps up in you. I remember when I did my first investment property, which was on an 8.5 by 28. It was a 14 square house, 3-bedroom, single garage. The house and land was $285,000.
Wow.
So that was combined, and I thought at the time my main concern was what if I couldn't find a tenant? And then you sort of it's one step, you keep sort of climbing up the so-called mountain, and then you look back and go, geez, it's come a fair way. But as you said, a lot of trial and error, but also super, super enjoyable. Like, I think if there's, and obviously there's a fair bit of info I can provide as we sort of go along, but if you are going to dive into property, you want to be really passionate about it. Anything you do, if you have a level of passion, generally you're going to go okay. It's not a situation where you just sort of want to daintily tip your sort of toe in. You need to go all in, and that means obviously things like research and talking to professionals and reading articles and social media, all that sort of stuff, to try and arm yourself with as much information. But yeah, really exciting, and something that you will see as we go through the conversation that I am uber passionate about. Uber.
Yeah, it's great. Well, let's get a lay of the land first. So you've built 8 homes. Can you share a little bit of an insight into what it is that you've built? What type of product it is.
So for the most part, so traditional off the plan house and land packages. So what I mean by that is I would find a block that fit my specific sort of investment sort of criteria, and there's a few different things that sort of go through. Find a block of land, generally match that with an appropriate house, and it's normally off the plan, so it hasn't titled. I'm putting down a deposit for something that's not constructed, and then generally what then happens is if you are strategic in regards to what you purchase, by the time you settle, so the length of time from when I would put down a deposit to when I would have settled on the land is generally anywhere from about 12 to 18 months. I think one was close to 2 years. So there's a fairly long tail. So that's in my space, the traditional sort of greenfields purchase. The last one, the second last one I've just recently done was through a self-managed super fund. So that was a one-part contract. So generally what I would do, buy the land, put down a deposit, find a builder, put down a deposit with the builder, put the two together, that's my house and land. And then I'd go to my bank and they would obviously get finance. With a one-part contract, it's all together. I put down a deposit on the whole thing. And then I have no holding costs until it settles. So I've done 2 of those. One was outside the super fund, and then the other one was in the super fund. The real benefit of doing a one-part contract that hasn't been constructed is, as I said, you put down a deposit, and then there's no holding costs. You're generally paying a little bit more for it, but I was able to have a traditional house and land being built while I had a contract for a one-part townhome on the go at the same time. And it was just about timing, because this is if you can get the timing right, you are going to do really well. Obviously, the flip side of that is if you get the timing wrong, it can go a bit south. So that's always like the key thing, and I suppose there's a few tips, but the key thing for me is you always need to be thinking long-term when you're doing these things. Yeah, it's not a situation where you just go, I'm just going to put down a deposit and then we'll see how we go. You need to be strategic about it, but where are you going to be in 12 months, 2 years, 3 years' time? Because you never want a situation where you purchase something off the plan and you can't settle. One thing I've been really proud about, especially given a number of the lots that I've purchased have been in the states that I have some level of project management with, is that I've settled everything that I've deposited on. The worst thing I could do is if I put down a deposit and I had to go to the developer and say, look, talking a big game, deposited, and then I can't settle. So that's probably, from my point of view, what I've been really, really happy. And it's been difficult in certain circumstances because life does get in the way. So,
for sure. How do you you're saying they were getting your timing right. Yep. What do you mean specifically? I mean, obviously, just to break that down for the listeners, because if you're trying to do 2 properties at once, like what are you trying to line up there, Ben?
Yeah. So, well, I'm trying to line up a couple of things. So obviously what you don't want is have to settle on multiple properties, unless you've got that capacity. I'm nowhere near that. So that's the first thing. I've sold to sort of purchasers. I remember one a few years ago who bought a bit of land across Armstrong Creek, and he had 5 contracts on the go at one time. And then there was this whole concertina effect where there was certain stages that he purchased in had come forward early. Some were delayed, and then he had all these sort of settled at the same time. So I wouldn't normally ever have more than 2 contracts. But what I'm thinking about is, all right, if I put down a deposit and I sign a contract today, and that block of land, let's just say a traditional house of land, is due to title in 18 months' time, and then I've then got to start building, where am I going to be from a financial position? So what obligations will I have? My daughters are getting the stage where one's in high school, okay, and the other 2 are private school, so there's a cost implication there. The other thing to think about is, all right, well, at the moment, interest rates are really high. So where do I think interest rates are going to be in 18 months' time? Or if we went back 2 years and I bought something then, where did I think interest rates would be? Where do I think my job would be? So you're buying something at today's price, and we'll talk about one of the what's an opportunity today. But you've always got to think about where are you going to be in the future. And most people I've spoken to, they can't think that far out. Like that, life gets in the way. They purchase something and then they have the great news of they're pregnant, which is great, but that potentially derails them. Potentially there's issue in regards to jobs. So it's always trying to think about worst case scenario. So you want to expect the best, but you need to plan for the worst. And that's off the plan is an amazing opportunity because you've got the benefit, as I said, to buying at today's price, but then having time do its work without any holding costs until you settle if it's traditional house and land. But there's a double-edged sword to that. So you really need to think about where you're going to be, what's your situation like. You can't go in it sort of half-cocked, if that makes sense.
Sounds like don't bite off more than you can chew. Really, is the answer, right?
Yeah, no, it is. But it's the push and pull. It's the fine line between being too aggressive and being a bit silly, but then pushing the envelope a little bit, because you in investing, I've realised you can sometimes play it a bit safe. The amount of people that, and this is it's a common thing, someone comes back, they've done really well. Oh, I should have bought two, or I should have bought the bigger one. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. So yeah, it's fine line. And that's why one of the tips I sort of mentioned is you do want someone that's slightly removed from your obsession to be able to sometimes bring your head above the water, so to speak, so you can actually have some clarity. FOMO is a big thing in property, especially when the market starts to kick. Every second news article about property prices going up, blah, blah, blah. But you need someone it's that counterbalance between, I'm going to make a heap of money, as opposed to, you might, but have you thought about that? You need that sort of check measure, which for me, that's my wife. She's the one that's always going to just keep me nice and on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, good.
So I'd say just for people who are new to it, maybe thinking about your first investment, if you're new to this space, what Ben means is the land that's available for sale today, some of it's titled, meaning it's ready to build on. You put a deposit down, you go get your building contract, and you settle on it reasonably in a short time frame from today. But there's land out there for sale that's not ready to build on yet. It's not constructed. It doesn't have the roads in there. It doesn't have all that stuff yet available. So you can sort of deposit with your land developer, and then it might be forecasted to be ready to be titled and built upon in 12 to 18 months. And that's what Ben's sort of saying, is you can put that, it's really just a deposit now, and you don't have to do anything else until you get closer to ready to settle, where it actually hits you finance-wise. And that's what, I guess that's pretty common, because it buys you that time. The risk with that is if the land does get delayed. That's one of the things we've highlighted before, Ben, just for your information. Some developers, you've got to make sure you pick the right one. Don't necessarily pick one that's really, really small and can't give you the confidence they're going to deliver in 12 months or in 18 months when they tell you, because it could blow out to another 12 months, and that ruins your plans, I suppose. So that's what that means. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the risk. So it's the risk reward. The benefit, say if you're a first home buyer, and this is why I always try first home buyers, if they're looking at purchasing, is you might, right today, if you're buying something off the plan, you might not be in a position to be able to finance something if you were settling today. Yeah. The amazing thing when, especially with first home buyers, once they sign that contract for the block of land, most of them, it locks them in. It really focuses them, because then it gives you time to continue to save, to continue to get yourself in a position. You might be an apprentice tradesperson, and in 18 months' time, 2 years' time, you're going to be off your apprenticeship. So there's some real benefits to that. But you are right. You need to make sure that the project you're going with has got a reasonably long track record of delivering land, but also it's not perfect. The amount of delays across a variety of projects that occurred, and they're all different. And that's why, if it is a situation where something is supposed to title in 12 months' time and it's delayed 12 months, you need to settle that block of land. That's where it's you need to put your big boy pants on and go, all right, there's been a delay, life's on hold, but I need to get this done. Because it's not a situation once you sign that contract that you can go, oh, well, it's been delayed, I'm going to do something else. And that's what I say, there's a level of commitment when you sort of lock yourself in. But it's risk reward. The reward can be significant if you can get through.
Probably swings a bit both ways too, Ben. If the titles come in early, you might be caught because you're thinking, I've got to, I'm saving a certain amount per month, knowing that I'm going to be there in 18 months' time. I'm going to have all this money ready to go, and then it's bought in 3 months, and you're 3 months short on that saving. So it's just being aware, isn't it, of what can go wrong, and then just having a backup plan for that, really, isn't it?
Well, it is, and it's. I had a situation where it's a townhome I contracted, and my wife, who was permanent part-time, She wanted to go to casual relief teaching just because our youngest was in primary school and she had just started primary school, and she wanted to be there for a lot of the school activities. So if you're a casual release teacher, it gives you the opportunity to say yes or no to shifts. And that had quite a significant effect on our serviceability. So I sort of went through a number of, like, you start at A and you work through to A, B, C, D, E to get to the plan to try and settle. And that was one of the reasons why I sort of went through the self-managed super fund route, not with that property because I actually couldn't, because I'd already signed it, in my personal name. But you're right. Like, early is much worse than later. I've had a couple of situations, not myself personally, but with projects where that's happened. And I think the key for that, for the specific developer, they really need to be notifying their clients as early as possible so you can put those plans in place. So that comes quite late in the piece. Saying that, there are some developers that, if that were to occur, they then are a little bit more flexible in regards to giving their clients some more time to settle. So everyone's different, but it's a communication piece on that one.
Yeah, good. The key learnings or lessons that you'd really highlight, about your, the process and I guess the general experience. Is there, some of those that you might want to throw at the listeners?
The multitude of mistakes I've made over the last
I didn't want to put it that way, but...
How have you stuffed it up along the way?
I have. And I keep... Well, I suppose it's one of the things I think with the lessons is be self-aware enough to know that it was your mistake. I think there are certain people that if something goes south, they actually don't take ownership. So, and I don't know if there was, I'm about to settle on a house. And there was a situation where I signed a variation, which for this specific project, there was a requirement to have a brick infill and a steel lintel across the garage, whereas it was like the Hardy. Was like the cement shed or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they replaced that. I signed the variation. Now I'd gone and upgraded this facade because I'm like, I'm going to be building, potentially settling in what I knew from sort of 18 months, 2 years out, was going to be a down market. So if they have to sell the house, I want to make sure the property stands out. So these are some of the things you think about. Like, if I have to sell, is the property going to sell for what it cost me? Can I just clear the decks? Yeah, that should be the bare minimum. You never want to go in if something goes south, you're actually having to... You're upside down. But I signed the variation. I didn't read it correctly, because if I had read it, I'm sure it would have said, FYI, Nuffy, your beautiful full rendered facade, because we're going to put brick across, we're actually going to remove part of the render. So I've gone up, I kept driving past my house. I'm like, well, it's not finished. And then I asked him, he goes, yeah, no, signed the variation. There's not supposed to be render over there. Now, from my point of view, it made the facade look much poorer, but that's a perfect example of you've got to be across the detail, right? There's a lot of detail, and it's inclusions. I fell for the standard inclusions. Didn't have towel rail and toilet roll holders. Got done on that one. So there's been a variety, but be across the detail. If you're not a detail person, get someone, whether it's your partner, a friend or family, to sort of go through it. There are groups out there that actually do some of that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's probably the first one. I think some of the other ones, and this crops up when you're actually... So I don't hold 8 properties. So I've pretty much worked out that, for a variety of reasons, but from a serviceability point of view, I can generally hold 2 to 3 properties. And then stuff happens, I have to sell one. And when you put a property on the market to sell, there's stuff that comes back that you sort of didn't think about. So don't be cheap on your inclusions, like your fixtures and fittings. Like, if you're arming and ahhing, like, it's much harder to go back in time. Well, you can't go back in time to sort of fix it. So be mindful, if you have to sell your property, someone walking through, what are they going to think? You're just going to go the really basic brick, or you're going to go and upgrade it. So that's probably one. It's happened a couple of times recently, but I would advocate, I don't know what you guys think, given you're obviously in the building space, but get a independent building inspection, certainly at a minimum at the end, unless you've got a friend or family member or you're really across the detail. So I can walk through a house and I would very much struggle to be able to visually go, all right, well, that's not right, that's not right. get a building inspector. Like I did one up in the north. The guy had a drone. He flew the drone across the top of the house. It's a townhome. He provides you a nice report which says if there's any issues. You then go to the builder, and then the builder goes, yep, I'm going to fix that. I'm not going to fix that based on ABC. It's an investment in getting a good quality product. Have a contingency on holding costs. That's hit me a couple of times. Being overly optimistic to think I've got enough money. You never want to run short. So holding costs is you're building the house, going well, but have you got enough money to continue to pay the interest repayments, but also then pay things like landscaping and fencing when you get to the end? And then probably the last one, which I'm really pro on. I don't know what you guys think of. If you guys are sort of handy people, I'm not. I've got two left thumbs, but I try and get everything into the loan. Yep. I would love, most builders don't do it, but for the builders to do fencing, most don't. Landscaping, I know the quality can sometimes be up and down depending on the builder, but landscaping, blinds, ideally I just want a turnkey. Give me the key. I'll get some things done post, but I want everything under the loan. That's probably because all of those things that I've sort of gone through, I've had a situation where something's come a cropper. But the main thing is don't let it derail you. Just pick yourself up, go, all right, well, yeah, that was probably on me. And I think the other thing is don't make the same mistakes twice, because obviously if you're not making twice, you're not learning.
By the way, Ben, I don't know if you've met Colin, but he's from H&L Vic, and they do full turnkey.
Oh, yes, Colin.
Give Colin a plug. He didn't want to do it himself. I see him itching towards what he's doing. I'm like, no. But anyway, cheap plug.
It is so annoying. Like I've got this property, right, and they've got two neighbours. They're lovely, both older ladies I was dealing with, and they were adamant that both, and this is two separate occasions, that the fence had to be a higher specification. I'm like, it's not. I've worked previously in the estate. I've sent the guidelines. So the one on the right, yeah, great. The one on the left just went and built it, and she's built an over-spec fence. So it's sort of, and it's just, I don't want to be an arsehole about it, because there are, but God, it is such a minefield dealing with people in that sort of situation. So Colin, if your company does that, that's amazing.
We got plenty of experience with the fencing argument, but so just there's so many things in there. So for those people who are trying to get an understanding what Ben said with understanding standard inclusions, there's episodes we've done on this podcast that will take you through that whole process, what to do, what to look for, what's made up in building quotes, etc. Just track back through some of the titles, you'll see those. Yeah. There are some of us out there that do service investors. That's our game, and in that case, it is what we do, Darren, as you said. We have a focus. It's not about a plug, but just saying so you understand there are options out there. There are builders and there are companies like us who focus on having standard inclusions at a point where there's no need for a promotion, there's no need for an upgrade. It's already got stone, high ceilings, downlights, all the things you need, but it also has fencing, landscaping, clothesline, and a letterbox. So basically, it's designed for investors to say, yep, that's what I want, that house, that block, that price, and off I go. And it's all, as you said, put into the one loan, which makes life a lot easier. So there are those of us out there that provide that, but that's the reason we provide it, is exactly for people like yourself, Ben, in that situation. It's like, I know the numbers stack up, and I just don't want to deal with anything else. Like, it's color boards, nice and simple, tick, 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 a few upgrades if you want. And the estate requirements on the fencing thing, in that example you've got, if she's built her fence higher than what the guidelines are, then that payment of half share needs to be proportionate to that. Yeah. And you could argue, I'll pay you 40% of your overall bill. It depends. Neighbours have to talk about it, but we've seen that many times. Part of the fun. But
it is. I mean,
over it. Oh, sorry.
No. Well, no, it wasn't high. It was exposed cap post with the what's his name, the thingo across the top, as opposed to just the normal fence. Yeah, I think that the flip side is, like, say for instance, my brother-in-law, super handy. I think in another word, is a salesperson. In another word, he would have loved to be a tradie. Can do heaps of stuff. If you think there's an opportunity to do a lot of the stuff outside of the contract, that's fine. I think it's for me, what I really value is it's time. I've got more important things to be doing in relation to that. I've got a group of people that I've sort of built around me. And that's probably one of the other tips is obviously make sure you got a good broker. And I'm sure you've done podcasts about this, but broker, financial planner, accountant, depreciation specialist, fencer, landscaper. Get your group of people around you, and ultimately just pay them. Because if you've made the right decision and you're going to do well in property, 10, 20, 30 grand up front is actually not going to move the needle much. It's going to have a real benefit down the track. But if you've made the right decision and you hold the property for long enough, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars you could potentially make, not you quibbling over whether you do downlights throughout the house and you cheap it and you do batten lights. So.
Yeah, totally agree. So you mentioned some common mistakes. Are there any others that you could highlight that you've sort of had over the 8 properties, or stuff you've seen others make as a mistake as well?
Yeah, I think. I think one of the. I mean, I always think about sort of the why. Like, why am I? Because it has been hard. Like, if you talk to my kids, I'll talk about the fact that we've had holidays, but we're not having a holiday every 12 months. Like, once you commit to, you put down a deposit and then you've got to settle, it locks your life into a certain extent. It's not as turn around and sort of say, right, well, I'm just going to jet off to Disneyland for a couple of weeks. And the benefit is we've been able to put a pool in because of property sale. My wife was very patient, drove around in a beat up Skoda for a decade. Skoda Superb. It was in the shop every 5 or 6 months. And that was based on the fact that I continually put us in a position where, well, we couldn't go and spend money on something because we had to get the settlement. So it's the why. So I've got a very strong why as to why I'm doing it. I want to build wealth for myself and my family. I think it's if you don't have that strong, like you just basically, it's FOMO. You go, I'll put the deposit. I spoke to my uncle and he said, you buy a block of land, you do well. But do you have that commitment? Because it's a big thing. Like we get people in our industry where they've signed a contract, something's changed, and then they'd like to exit the contract and get the deposit back. Developer's gone and built you a block of land. They've gone, you've signed a contract, you paid a deposit, and they've built you a physical block of land. Like the cost to build a block at a minimum is $100,000, and then you add in obviously all the additional costs on top of that. So it's not for the faint of heart. So if you don't have enough conviction, that's probably a risk. Being indecisive and wanting the most perfect, it's got to be 100% right. Yeah. It's got to be the best orientation, the best location. 9 times out of 10, it's not. And if you're in a rising market, especially so if you came out of the home builder and you bought, say, 2018, 2019, 2020, you could have bought anything. You would have done it right? Yeah. So sometimes it's like if you see an opportunity, maybe it's 80 to 90% right, just pull the trigger. The amount of people that have come back 12, 18 months, 2 years after originally inquired because they were arming and ahhing and so I should have bought 2 years ago. I'm like, well, you probably should have. Doesn't mean you're not going to miss out now. Be indecision. And then I think the other thing is listening to too many people, which obviously feeds into that indecision. Like be really strong as to what you want to do, but who you trust to advise you. Because you guys would know, there's lots of people that are experts about property. But if you probe a bit deeper, Uncle Gary, so when did you buy your property? Oh, I bought it in the late 80s. Yeah. Well, you don't really have any recent history of the experience.
And interest rates back then for Uncle Gary were 17%, you know.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
That's funny you say that because we've talked about that a number of times and personally, not Darren, just me personally, I refer to Uncle Gary and those types of people as hero clients, because they're the ones that the actual client, potentially in most cases, that's a first home buyer who just needs a little bit of help. They actually go and ruin it for them because they don't know what they're talking about. So it's good advice. Be very careful. If you want to learn something, listen to the people who actually have the experience, podcasts like this or the consultants at display homes, they will be able to tell you what's real and what's not. They want the best package they can get for you because, they want to make a sale, of course, but they're not going to try and sell the worst one. Like that's not really how we're wired, so Uncle Gary, take his opinion, but make sure it's all relative.
I was going to say, I wrote down, and you mentioned earlier about having a great team, but it's also having a mentor, isn't it? And that mentor, you're not going to get some bloke who's never had an investment property. If you're looking for a mentor in buying an investment property, you're going to get someone who's had experience in doing it and shown success. Because you want to follow the path that they've led. So, getting a great mentor, and Uncle Gary might not be the great mentor. Like he's just a guy on the side, and I happen to have an Uncle Gary, so shout out to my Uncle Gary.
I was just thinking, there's probably a Gary out there thinking, you guys are pricks.
No.
Right.
Uncle Gary has got the best intentions. It's just
Absolutely.
sometimes I think, but you're right. Like if you can find, like I never had. I mean, I work in the industry. My wife always says, "Oh well," when I'm big noting myself to her, she goes, "Well, you've had a leg up because you work in the industry." Which is true to a certain extent, but a lot of I know plenty of people in our industry that have never invested themselves. So my parents, my dad's a school teacher, mum's a vet nurse. They've had one property, paid it off, never invested, very risk averse, like super conservative. So I think you're right. If you can find someone, but that's sometimes you need to blaze your own trail, but it's all about your convictions. If you feel strong enough about something and you do the required research, you'll get a result. Like it's not as though being successful in property is something that is new. You could go back 100 years. So and there's so many resources out there. This podcast is a great example, but books, YouTube, all that sort of stuff. So.
What are some of the things you didn't plan for, Ben, along the way that might have caught you by surprise? And they're not necessarily just financial, but they sometimes can be, other bits and pieces. What might that be?
I think probably like the wife going from permanent part time to CRT. That I didn't necessarily. It wasn't a situation where I'd turn around and say, "Well, no, I don't want you to do it," because she really wanted to do it. So we had to sort of change. I didn't realise the dramatic effect it would have on serviceability. I think probably I'm continually surprised in a positive way. I know there's been times when, because I've purchased across multiple cycles. So I bought a townhome May 2022. It was like peak of the market. I think I should do okay from that. And I bought stuff at the bottom of the market. And every time, like coming from, say, buying something for the house and land, the first one, 285,000, you always think that you're paying more. And I'm like, it's gone up. Why would it? I'm always surprised that by the time you settle and then you build and then say if you have to sell, that it keeps going up, if that makes sense. So I think sometimes you can sort of have, if you purchase a block of land at today's price and then you want to reinvest a couple of years down the track, there is this propensity to go, well, I bought that for that price, so I'm paying too much now. It's all relative. So I'm always being surprised at that. I think apart from that, I think I'm pretty sort of flexible, nothing real. And that's probably the other thing is sort of resilience, probably a big thing. Like you sort of, stuff's going to happen. It's just crop up. Normally, as I said, the stuff that happens is I haven't sort of been enough across the detail. I'll just sort of charge ahead sometimes. So no, apart from that, I don't think there's been any major surprises that have been a negative. Well, actually, probably the most recent surprise was I had this idea that I wanted to do spec homes. I'm like, because seeing, and we'll talk about opportunity, but there was these amazing opportunities out there, especially with title land. I'm like, if I could take these two 10.5 by 32s that no one loves, 10.5 by 32s, narrow lots, inefficient. I can go and get two houses that I reckon make the best of those specific blocks. And if I can get them at this price and then I hold them for this period of time and then I sell them, I reckon I'll actually make money. Spoke to my accountant, went through the whole process of setting up a company. And then I went to my broker and literally, given the current interest rates, I could get 4/5 of FL. Like I could get enough money for probably a quarter of one of the houses. So that was probably the thing. And I went like, I don't take no normally. Like every no is one no closer to yes. But after 4 no's of trying different sort of avenues, it's like, well, given my what I've got and the financial sort of setup, it didn't make sense. But I was really, I mean, I'm in the industry, but I was really surprised at the difficulty, and that's probably the thing that's going to change shortly. Like you talked about green shoots, interest rates are going to come down, right? Yeah. I think I sort of said in the previous podcast, don't wait for the interest rates to come down. You miss the boat. But when they come down, they're going to come down quick. And that's when you're going to see that market sort of accelerate. So that's probably the thing that surprised me, is the fact that it is really hard to get money at the moment.
Yeah, I'd said that since you did the last podcast, I'd shared that comment exactly with a couple of people. I think it was a nice way to put it. It's the way you worded it along those lines around, if you're waiting for the interest rates to drop, you've already missed the boat, you know. Yeah. And it's not that you won't do well out of it. It's just that you won't do as well out of it, because right now there's so much out there, isn't there? It's available, but people are like,
correct.
Uncle Gary would say, you got to wait for the interest rates to drop and only then should you buy. Whereas we'd be like, well, no, the builders are back on track. They're building in a decent time frame. And in terms of the land, there's so much opportunity there, nominations or titled, or even stuff that's titled down the track.
100%. Like, yeah, you've got plenty of choice. You've got ability to negotiate. You've got amazing sort of rebates and discounts on offer. You've got ability to negotiate terms, deposits. And that goes back to the whole don't stress if it's not 100% perfect. Like in this market, if you could get something and settle it today, you should be confident in 12 to 18 months. This is not financial advice, but this is like I tell people, like, I'm not an economist, but certainly economics has been a bit of a hobby recently, obviously the last couple of years because of inflation and all that. And I watch it really, really closely. And you don't it's going to come down. Interest rates are going to come down. Like, it's a matter of time. So if you can get something at this amazing opportunity price, and then you fast forward 12 to 18 months, so let's say interest rates only came down 1%. So maybe they come down, your service becomes down, goes up 100 grand. Your investment property potentially changes from, instead of it being negative, maybe it becomes neutral. Maybe if you're really smart, maybe it becomes positive. So you're 100% right. The opportunity is really now. You even have to look at, say, off the plan stuff. Like if you're looking at something that hasn't titled, the incentive that you can get is a hell of a lot less than what you can get off the title block of land. So that the reverse is the timing. Like that's where, like, sometimes you just get yourself a block, get in the market, build your house, and then the market will do the rest.
It's funny, Darren, we often talk about that interest rate, like how much extra over the course of 12 months is the current interest rate, then waiting for it to drop, you know, a little bit versus, you know, you can get a 30 grand rebate off some blocks right now today that won't be available when those interest rates drop. You can get a good discount off a builder right now. That why would they want to offer that when the market and the people coming through is now increased, because they don't need to offer it to incentivize you any further. The savings you get by buying and getting, you know, the rebates and the discounts and the good promotions is going to far outweigh any form of interest rate increase. Like the serviceability is the other thing, Darren, wasn't it, that we talked about? It's like you actually get your income capacities is based on a serviceability that's here. They have a buffer. So even if that does go up, you can actually still afford it. Like I think the education around this might be a bit light on, and people's understanding that's where they do take Uncle Gary's opinion too much, and they need to understand, talk to a finance broker about how it really works, and then a professional in the land or in the house or in both in the industry that they will tell you what's out there, won't they, Daz?
Yeah, and that 0.25% that it might be higher right now than what you're sort of feeling comfortable with, you add that up on what it is actually in real dollars per month. It's about $125 a month. You know, you work that out over a year, it's about $1,500. But you could go and save 30 grand off the, you know, the deal now, and you're paying $1,500 more a year. Like, hold on, that's 20 years worth of saving. You know what I mean? In real terms, like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to people.
the other thing to that is like if you've got a strong enough why, work out what your costs of living. Like what are you spending, right? Potentially there's an opportunity to go, I can do this, but I'm going to have to make some sacrifices in the short term. That's the key. If you can make those sacrifices, and as I said, it's like that to your like get in, because you're not. I don't remember. I'm just trying to remember the last sort of. I don't remember the level of incentives that you could get today ever being in play. I mean, Grant, as an example, my ex-salesman talks about they used to, like back in the day, like the GFC times, they were giving away cars and stuff like that. But I don't remember the level of incentives that we've got at the moment. So it is take advantage of it. But it's about, and this is the thing, it's like being strong-willed, but make the short-term sacrifices. It's what my wife and I and our family have done. We're still in the same house that we've been in, our first home, since 2010. We would have loved to have built a new house or moved to something bigger. Mother-in-law lives with us. But you've got to make sacrifices. So what's important? Is it short term? Yeah. Or is it maybe the long term? So that's sort of that plays into that why that I've spoken about a bit.
It's also, just to piggyback off that, something that we use on this podcast all the time, Ben, is understanding and your needs versus your wants. And we've gone through quotes and things like that, like the formats and actually we've even highlighted, Darren, the items that we think are needs versus wants. And 40 mil stone and 27 ceiling heights are not needed. 20 mil stone and 2.5 ceiling heights, perfect. And there's a few grand right there, So we see that with first home buyers mainly, quite often. I also see it because we deal with investors a fair bit. We see it with some investors where they get too emotionally connected to the investment and they're telling us what they need. And we're like, you don't need that. We've built literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of investments, and you're telling me that you think you need, it's going to increase your resale value for this. It's like, it's
they're
not
also
going to
not living
happen.
in it. Like that's the other thing is like they make emotional decisions based on if they were living in the house. You're never going to live in the house. You're never going to live in that suburb. It's not what it's about. I think that the compromises, like you see a lot of people, and it like each investment is sometimes different, but sometimes like don't be a sheep. Do something different. If you're doing your research and every person is building a 4-bedroom home and a 400 square meter lot, maybe there's an opportunity to build a smaller house. Like some of my best investments have been actually quite small ones. So that's the compromise thing. Like you don't, if you can't afford to do a 400, maybe you can do a 350. You can't do a 350, do a 313. If you can't afford to do a house and land, do a townhome. If you can't afford to do a townhome, find a 8.5 by 21 and build a 12 square house. Like this is, if you can't afford to do that, buy a 1-bedroom apartment. Like it's just get into the market. That's like the old saying is like the best time to buy was yesterday. And it's 100% true.
Yeah.
For sure. It's good.
So we did already touch on the self-managed super fund stuff. So maybe, Daz, we might jump into the next question on your end.
Where do you see the next opportunity out there? And it could be specifically for you, or maybe a bit broader than that. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think so. Obviously, mentioned the self-managed super fund stuff. So certainly continuing to utilize that. I think long-term trends across Australia, like there is a massive housing issue. You can't get away from that, and no matter what the politicians say, they're certainly not brave enough to make the decisions that would alleviate some of those issues. Australia as a nation is becoming unproductive. It's one of the reasons why we continue to need to bring in skilled migrants. So look, from my point of view, certainly the opportunity at the moment is titled land. And that's anywhere, like developers, especially the experienced, sophisticated developers. It's not in there, it's just to sit on title land forever and a day. So because of the land tax changes, so if a developer's got a title block of land today, when we roll into the new year, they have to pay land tax. Now, previously that was able to be passed on to the end purchaser. So you might, let's say a developer's got 10 title blocks of land. They're potentially going to be up for $10,000 each. So $100,000 if those blocks can't be contracted and settled before the end of the year. So what does that tell you? That's motivation. Developer is going to be motivated to try and get rid of those. So that's probably the big thing. But the one part stuff, I really like one part contracts. I think it's the ability to put down a deposit, and then for the whole house to be built, not have any holding costs, and then to be able to put that in your super fund. I think we're seeing a lot with NDIS sort of stuff, but there's obviously trillions of dollars in super for people. I think you're seeing that shift where I think self-managed super funds become very much the norm for most people that are investing. And what's that going to do? It's going to drive capital growth, because you go where the money goes. If you've got a heap of money moving into a specific sector, well, prices are going to go up. So it's probably what I'm looking at the moment.
Have you got a do you have a long-term exit strategy sort of set up to go, how does that sort of play out for you?
I wanted to be retired by 50. I'm 43 this year, so that's not going to happen. No, exit strategy. Well, with the super fund stuff, like, I didn't realise. We obviously speak to your financial planner, but there's some massive tax benefits. So you get a property in there, and let's say it's cash positive. My understanding is your tax rate's 15%. Yeah. The big win is you hold that property until you retire. You don't pay any capital gains tax. Like, nothing. So the long-term plan is I want to keep doing a property at a minimum, ideally one every 1 to 2 years if I can. And I want to move into potentially going down that spec home route, because I think in the current market, there's a lot of people that very much would prefer to have the confidence of signing a contract for something that's either under construction, everything's in there, like that sort of surety. And I think if you're clever enough in regards to what you can do, there's so many different ways you can add value to a property if you think about it. And that's the thing. Like, what I see a lot with people is you get the block of land, you whack the house on it, you don't really think about it. So it's keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, my role does allow me a little bit of visibility on certain opportunities, but it's just that one foot in front of the other, one sort of investment sort of brick. I just think, like, if you fast forward, we spoke about the last podcast about the land supply issues specifically in Geelong. If you keep that in the back of your mind, that land supply in Geelong, a broad area, it's like a slow moving car crash. Like, you can see it's going to happen. But what's the benefit of that? Putting aside if you're a first time buyer trying to get in the market, well, its prices will go up. It's just a matter of time. Yeah. So, and just watch the market. Like, it's cyclical. We're right at the bottom. So what's going to happen? It's going to go up, and you just want to make sure that you're on there for the ride. But just, really probably the last thing to finish on is just make sure you're really strong on that why you're doing it. Because if you've got that conviction, no matter what happens as you're investing, you're going to be able to get through. But if you don't, that's when you're going to get knocked off course, and Uncle Gary's going to get in your ear, and the whole thing's going to go south. So just be strong in your conviction. And then I think, like, probably the last thing is just do your research. Like, I can go in, well, and most people probably can't, but you should be able to, on the internet, you should be able to work out, if you're investing in an area, what's the long-term population growth? What's the gross rental yield today? What's the vacancy rate? Yep. What's the potential infrastructure that's coming? Yeah. But it's all on the internet. Now, if you're investing in a newer area and you're not across any of that, now, if you speak to your land sales professional or your builders and you ask them their questions, they should be able to tell you as well. But, like, you're not buying a block of land and just crossing your fingers. Yeah. There's a fair amount of research before that. Like, as an example, I invested in Beveridge. Beverage's vacancy rate at the moment is 6%. Terrible, right? It means there's an overabundance of investment properties. Why did I invest there? Well, by 2041, the population is going to go, this is Beveridge, from 10,000 to 70,000 people. There's a $900 million piece of road infrastructure that has got funding from the federal government. There's a $2.4 billion piece of a rail transport hub infrastructure. So if you go, all the money's going to go there, all the people are going to go there, well, you invest in there, and then prices go up. Like, it's not rocket science, but you got to put the work in.
For sure. It's good.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to say wrap up with the tips, but you sort of have essentially just dropped those tips.
I went rogue. Sorry about that, mate.
That's all right. That's good. I think that's a good way to finish it up. So again, Ben, thank you for, I guess, sharing all that. And for the listeners, the people who are listening or watching, hopefully you've got some good value out of this, because we like to provide as much of it as we can to you that help you with your first home, your investment, whatever it may be when you build a house. So from my end, I think that's all. What about you, Daz? Anything else to add?
No, mate, fantastic. Well done on being brave, Ben, and having a crack at all these ones, mate. And that's part of what it's about, isn't it? You got to, that saying, fortune favours the brave. So you got to take a few risks along the way to grow that success. And it sounds like you've done that really well. So
100%. And then the other thing is, like, it shouldn't be a thing that's stressing you out. Like, it should be, you should actually enjoy the process. Like, you don't want to be doing it and be in your house, bloody quaking in your boots about potentially what, like, fortune favours the brave, but have fun with it. Like, it is the most enjoyable thing I get is actually driving past the houses when they're being built. I really love that. I reckon it's the best thing ever. So
love it.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right, guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Good on you, Ben. Thank you. For everyone else,
thanks for the opportunity.
Like what you're seeing or like what you're listening to, please leave us a 5-star review. That'll be helpful on the platform you're on. Any questions, topics, jump onto homebuildinghub.com.au, leave them there, and we'll come back to you. And other than that, thanks for joining us again. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. And just our disclaimer, whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions.
1